Alright, so starting to finish up the Bowie knife here. First thing I need to do is start to polish from tip to the back. And what I'm going to do is just start to hand sand this blade. This has been sanded on the grinder to probably about 600 or so. It's got a few little wonkinesses in it. It's reasonably straight. The plunges are pretty centered. Clip is pretty centered. So it's close enough to hand sand from. If there was anything major wrong, I'd go back to the grinder and adjust it. Alright, so I'm going to put this into my sanding jig and show you the steps of sanding. Since I've come off the grinder at I think 400 or 600, I'm actually going to go back a step in my sanding so that I take this all down. And I don't know if you can see in the video, but I have a little bit of a 2-inch mark and some waves in it and things like that where I kind of miffed on the grinder a little bit. And I can fix that now in the hand sanding. It's pretty close, so it shouldn't take too much to fix. Alright, so we can see here, I'm not sure if it'll show up in the camera, there's some funk here, there's a little bit of weirdness in the plunge. And now is the time to take care of that. For the plunge, I do have a little bit of an overrun here. And I can deal with that a couple different ways. I can either try to crisp it up with a file, which is a good way to go sometimes. Or I can even go back to the grinder and touch it up, which also can be a good way sometimes. Or I can just kind of blend it out. I think in this case I have enough of a notch there that I can just file it in. The reason this happened was because this knife was ground on a baiter, and they do not have the best racking. And that was one of the reasons that this knife kind of got set aside. The plunges were fairly even in length, but the radiuses were completely different because of the baiters, two different sides of the platen having different radiuses. Alright, I'm going to find my file and then I will get started on this. So I've got my file here. It's just a small needle file, pretty hard Heller file. This has been tempered already, so the file should just cut into it like that. I'm just going to try to push this radius down into this corner here. You see that's starting to turn from a square into a radius. Push that radius back a little bit. I like these tapered needle files for this because the top tends to cut a slightly less radius and it just kind of blends out nicely to the turnout and makes that much easier to blend in later. Looks pretty okay. I'm just kind of moving that turnout back a little bit. This right here. This is kind of almost a sculpting at this point. Alright, that's pretty good. So I have this little spot here where I've over on the top, and I'll just polish that quickly, and then later I'll hit it with some bluing to hide it a little bit. It'll look fine. So now I'm going to start to polish the inside of that radius. And I know this sanding block here has about the same radius as that block. So I'm going to take this and this is 220 grit sandpaper. I like the Rhino Wet red line. Just clean that up. I find if I go straight up and down, I'll tend to cut grooves. And if I grease here, this is just Windex. If I find if I go straight in, I miss the corner. So I tend to go at like 30 degrees or so. And then I can drag across the top of the radius a little. It comes up nice. And I go back and forth 45 degrees to itself. And let's plunge up a little more. And then switch to the leather side of this so I get a little cushion. That looks alright. I'm not sure how that looks on the camera. It looks pretty good from here. So now I'm going to start to pull this back some. Still quite a bit to do on this, but it's starting to get there anyway. I want to use the flat hard block first to try to level any of these minor inconsistencies out. There's an adage of use the abrasive like it's free. That's a good adage. Don't think about how much it costs. Think about how much time it saves you to switch to a fresher piece. So I've gotten just about to the end of the 220 grit here, and this is what it should look like. You have a little spot right here to finish, and there's a little technique change I want to show you guys that I do for getting in that corner. Previously I had gone this direction using the block flat to the work to kind of clean up that corner. So I was doing this. So now I want to take those lines that are going this way at 220 grit and blend them all back in with the rest of the work. So normally I would do this with a little bit of oil on here or Windex, but I'll show you. So I want to use the rounded front edge here. This one's getting a little bit worn out. I have some others that if I have a tighter plunge I can use. I'll just fold that over tightly like that. Now I'm just going to use the front edge, just drag those lines in there, putting a good amount of pressure here. since this is pretty early in the process, I don't care if I have J-hooks. It doesn't hurt a damn thing. J-hooks are going to go away in the next grit. The only time you really care if you have a good linear pulled finish is at the end. So until then, you just want to make sure you're all the same even scratch. Thickness and density. I'm going to just kind of blend that a little in there. There we go. Really in there. Kind of play the light in there a little bit. And look to see if there's any spots that you are missing with that earlier grit. Angle. Let's just make sure you have everything cleaned out so that when you do the next grit, it'll go easier. Alright. And that should be good. So now I'll just take the block one last time and just clean the whole surface. Look for anything that looks different. I usually do this without anything on the paper, just so I can see if I have a clean finish. Pretty good. Alright. I'm going to clean up the surface. Get underneath here, make sure there's no real crazy 220 grit stuff floating around. Okay. Next grit's going to be 400. Alright, this is 400 grit Rhino wet paper. Just a piece torn off of this here. And I'm going to actually use WD-40 with this one. Not a ton, but I find with the finer grits the oil helps separate and keep the paper clean. So I'm going to pull this nice and tight over here, single layer. And I'm going to start by going lengthwise, and then I'll go slightly diagonal. And that way I know I've missed everything. So I'll go lengthwise, diagonal, lengthwise. Now diagonal. I'm putting a good amount of weight down on this. Let's see. That's what it should look like. I should have all of my lines going diagonal to the surface. If I see any big lines going underneath here, like I see in here, I'm going to go back. Now I'll go back lengthwise again. Yeah, that's good. See how I'm rolling it over to blend this radius here in. Still not caring about J-hooks or anything like that. Now I'm going to do that thing with the tip of this again. Fresh paper. clarifier. Got a little bit of an auto home showing up on the spine of this knife, which is kind of cool. Didn't know that was there. Yeah, that's gonna be like. Okay, and that's what it should look like after 400. So this is where the knife should look after 600 grit. The only thing I did differently for the 600 grit from before was I came in with a slightly harder block of wood and a sharper corner, and I cleaned up inside here because I was having trouble getting it with a finer paper, just like this. That's it. Now that that's all cleaned up to 600, I'll leave this side done. The final finish on the knife will probably be about 800 grit, but I generally take it to 600 and then leave it until I'm done with everything in case I scratch the knife up. So now I'll move on to the next side. Okay, so I have this side down to a solid base at 220. The inside of this cleaned up pretty well as well. I want you to just pay attention. See, I've taken this and put some masking tape over it. That'll just help me keep it from getting scuffed up as it rides against the surface of the sanding board. A little bit of a scuff on the other side is not a big deal to fix, but if you end up with too much, it can be starting over, which is annoying. I also want to point out just how well supported this is. This sanding board is based on one that Ed Braun had designed, based on one I believe Nick Wheeler had designed. It's nice because it has some screws underneath. I ended up building this one, but I can mount this down hard to it and then jack the nylon piece up to give it good pressure. And that means that when I'm sanding, I can put a lot of pressure on the blade without worrying about it deflecting or stabbing me or bending the blade or anything like that. There we go. These little J-hooks and such don't matter. I'm going to go to another grit. So I have the 400 grit. Now I will step to 600, and then the hand sanding will be finished. Okay, so the knife is now hand sanded out to 600 grit on both sides. Not perfect, but in a reasonable finish. I'll go back and go 800 and clean these up all the way, but I have a good base polish now. So now I'm going to polish the spine in these two areas, starting with the swage cuts, because the swage cuts, it's easier to see the terminus here if this is black, so I do that after. And these essentially get done the same way. I'm going to use this slightly smaller sanding stick with a fairly hard backing, starting at 220. Just pick up that angle. A little bit here. For that one, I'll do the same on this side. This one's a lot cleaner. Nice. shift this over slightly by just changing the angle a little bit. That actually looks pretty good. Now I'll polish this the same way. Okay, that looks pretty good. I think I need to push a line over slightly. If we can see here. Oh, it looks pretty good on camera too, I guess. This one needs to go, looking at it out of the vise, it's fine. This needs to get pushed over a little right here. So I'll put this back in the vise and do that. The roots are pretty good. It's just in here. There we go. This is 400 grit, by the way. I'm going to turn this around so I can see that section a little better. There we go. On to 600 grit. And I know this is dangerous, but I've never found a safer way of doing it. If you're having trouble seeing this and seeing the center on this, what you can do is put some Sharpie or some Dykem across the surface so you have a little better reference for where your sandpaper's hitting. And that'll help you keep the same angle and keep everything centered. Looks pretty good to me. Normally we clean up in here, but I left hammer marks in here. There's not much to clean up, so I'm going to leave it and just quickly shine it a little bit so it matches the Ricasso. I'll do that with the 600 grit as well. This way. Okay. Ready to polish the rest of the handle.